it's Deltia from DeltiasGaming.com here with Flare Noob on the public test server, and we're going to go over Omega DPS. Now, I have some video of my actual character on the PTS point, almost 28,000 single target damage on the blood spawn. Significant boost for Magic Templars. And this time I'm doing a little differently. Not just the AFK sweeps build, but a flare dot build. So let me take you through this and show you the new skills, similar gear, and the champion point changes so you can be updated for the Thieves Guild in 2.3. Okay, so we're going to go over the skills that are somewhat different than we used in the past, some of them the same. So first things first, Magic DPS builds you know and you love or you hate Inner Light. The thing about Inner Light is now you don't have to double bar it. You can double bar it, but it's no longer toggleable. For this build we use spell power potions and spell crit anyways, so I'm going to get that anyways. But the major benefit is the max magic. The more magic you have, the more damage you do. It's kind of like, I kind of liken it to spell power. Also, the nice thing about it is you can click it, and it does have a high magic cost, but you can get an Empower with it. Why is that relevant? Well, in the Mages Guild here, Empower makes 20% more damage your next attack. So the way I like to start off combat, which I'm going to show you in the rotation section, is empowering my Shooting Star. So Shooting Star has a big hefty damage up front, damage over time, and it benefits from that 12%. Also, once you cast Shooting Star, you're going to get another Empower, which goes really well for our next ability, Vampire's Bane. So I tested these out, and Vampire's Bane does a lot of damage. There's a couple options that you have working with this build. You can do Vampire's Bane, which on my Dumber did more damage, or Purifying Light. It now critically hits and does a ton of damage. The nice thing about Purifying Light has a good heal with it. The downside is it's not going to benefit from Empower, and it's not going to do damage over time. It's going to do damage at the end of its phase. So I personally like Vampire's Bane and this patch. Both are great options. This also gives you the spell critical. Using it lasts 11.7 seconds. And it is just a hefty dot now. It really got buffed very well. Also, you'll notice I have puncturing sweeps on my bar, though I'm not using this as a primary damage source. What I can use this for is to heal myself up close, but really the only reason I put this on is for the Aedric Spear ability. To do, while having an Aedric Spear ability slotted, increase your critical strike damage by 10%. So you can go with a couple different options. You like a gap closer here, knockback, a shield, or a ward. Those are both great options. So you could go Blazing Spear here if you didn't want to. Something for protection. Either way, you want to have one Aedric Spear ability slotted. Next up is the Heavy Hitter. This was bumped up by 12%, and I can really tell a major damage increase with it. Dark Flare. It's a 1.2 cast. So the typical DPS right now on live server is Puncturing Sweeps over Dark Flare. Puncturing Sweeps heals you, but you have to be up close, and it also has a chance to proc Burning Light. My testing, Dark Flare outperformed Puncturing Sweeps. You'll notice though, Puncturing Sweeps does cost a little bit less. Though Dark Flare costs more, you have the benefit of range, and you have the benefit of empowering the next attack. That's going to be important. You've seen how this is kind of a theme with Empower, 20% of your next attack. So you can even empower the next Dark Flare. But what I like to do is light weave, or a heavy medium weave, the way I like to do it. And actually when we look at the DPS chart, it almost is the top of my DPS using heavy attack weaves. Why is that relevant? Well, with the Vet Maelstrom Arena staff, you get more damage from light and heavy attacks, and that's 1,200. That adds up significantly while you maintain Wall of Elements. So we gotta have Wall of Elements for that reason, and Blockade of Fire is the one that I like. The damage morph that explodes did not outperform Blockade of Fire. The extra ticks really made a difference. So I use Dark Flare about 3 to 4 times, and then I maintain my dots. So this is an 8-second dot. Vampire's Bane is 11-second dot. You're going to have to maintain those. And when those are up and burning, then you just go back to your Dark Flare about 3 to 4 times until you need to reapply them. Just remember that when you Dark Flare an empowered attack, next attack means either light attack, it means a Vampire's Bane, a Sweeps, or something like that. So when you have an Empower and you need to recast Vampire's Bane, don't attack the next attack. Wait till you hit that Vampire's Bane, because that will produce better results than light weaving a light attack. Otherwise, you're basically light attack weaving in and out Vampire's Bane, Blockade of Fire. Shooting Star outperforms Nova. It can be empowered. It also gives us an empower, gives us max magic, reduced cost for having it slotted via the Mage's Guild passives, and it costs a lot less. So I definitely use that over Nova. Now I have Nova on my back bar. Why? It's for damage mitigation and an AoE CC via the synergy. It's very, very good. It doesn't benefit from a power, and usually the healers run it, but I have it just in case. You could swap this out for Dawnbreaker Smiting, whatever you want. And actually, they just changed Crescent Sweep. And Crescent Sweep hits like a truck now in front of the enemies, and 72 ultimate cost. I haven't tested today, but this could be a game changer for Crescent Sweep. Okay, so dual wield was the old method, and I like weaving now. Now, dual wield still gives you a lot more spell power than destruction staff. And so the main two things that we're going to use dual wield for is our execution phase, Radiant Oppression, which I still like to do at around 25% of the boss's health, and then AoE, or 2 or more mobs for Blazing Spear. Blazing Spear still hits very, very hard. It can proc Burning Light. It also can stun enemies. People can use the synergy. So I just hang back in the distance and proc Burning Light left and right, spamming this thing. Just remember, though, that you need to be generating ultimate before you start spamming it, because just spam throwing this will not generate ultimate for you. You'll have to either heal someone, heal yourself, light attack, something. So don't just stand back there and not generate ultimate. Keep an eye if your ultimate is generating, because you always want to use them suckers. Next ability up, Proxy Debt. This is actually doing a lot of damage single target, and it's just a no-brainer for any magic build AoE. You place a bomb on yourself, and it blows up in an 8-meter radius. Each mob around increases the damage and the effectiveness of this. So ideally, I start with this. I'll cast it on myself, go into the 8-meter range, wait till it blows up. I do recast this in combat only if there's 2 or more mobs. So single target, like I said, I don't want to make it super complex for people to run this, so I'm not going to do single target proxy debt. Also, Channel Focus. Channel Focus gives you your major wards, and also another huge benefit on the PTS that we're getting is while standing in your Cleansing Ritual or Rune Focus or Rites of Passage, you get Major Mending. So I thought it was just applied to Purifying Ritual. Nope, it's all the rituals. That is a huge change that will do well for PvE, PvP. So just remember that you're going to get a lot more healing too being in that focus. Very, very good. So why do we use this? Well, the resistance is great, but really it's the magic that we want. This is how I maintain my magic between this and potions. And the benefit of having more magic is the execution phase. Remember that Radiant Oppression is going to deal damage increased based on your magic. So before you do a Jesus Beam execute, you need to have Channel Focus down, your dots, and use a potion. You want to have as much magic as you can. That's really, really important. Now, if you're struggling on this build with magic, and let's say you don't have Proxy Debt, because it does take a while to PvP to get this, so not everyone's going to have Proxy Debt available to them. What you can do is go another Destruction Staff and run Weakness to Elements, Elemental Drain. That's going to restore magic every time you hit them, and it reduces their spell resistance. Typically, tanks reduce spell resistance anyways, but it's a good way to maintain a lot of magic. So, like I said, don't have Proxy Debt, do another Destruction Staff, put on Elemental Drain in combination with Channel Focus, and you should not have magic problems. Okay, Blazing Spear talked about that. The benefit of dual wield on a Templar is that we don't need anything to heal ourselves. We don't need a Resto Staff, so we can just use Breath of Life. Yes, this has gotten nerfed, but it's still an effective way to heal ourselves. So we're in the Channel Ritual. This is going to be a big heal for us and someone else. And it's a nice way that we can still help out the group in need, because we're not going to do a whole lot of healing like we did in the previous build. So I still recommend this. And if you have a really razor sharp healer and it's not an issue for you, maybe you want to slot Repentance for the minor boost in your resources. You could even do more things like another Resto Staff, and you could do another resource regenerating tool for Siphon here, morphed into Spirit Siphon. So if you read this, each attack you'll restore health and 1% of your magic. So hypothetically in raids, a healer is going to run this. When I say raids, I mean trials. A healer is going to run this, and a DPS is going to run this, giving you a lot more magic generation. And that brings up a good point. This build is for PvE dungeons, Vet Maelstrom Arena. It's not for the new trial. These can be used in the old trial. The reason it's not is you're going to have magic problems just flare spamming if you're not running these specific buffs, because the fights are 4 to 5 minutes. So you'd have to change your gear a little bit if you wanted to run this specific build in order to maintain the amount of magic that you need to just basically fight indefinitely. Solar Prison on the back bar, like I said, this is just to have people just for damage mitigation reasons, but not specifically anything else, because we have our Adric Spear ability on here, so we're getting that damage that we need. We take a look at my DPS parse on the PTS with 2 beams before the server transfer happened. So Dark Flare, Radiant Oppression, and Blockade of Fire actually outperformed Vampire's Bane. And that was the Blockade of Fire at level 1, the rank. You can see my heavy attack weaving really adds up, which I'm going to show you in this video. So it's pretty simple. I just cast Proxy Det once, but you can see the amount of damage that Flare, Blockade of Fire, and Radiant Protection are doing. Okay, so we're going to show you just a simple rotation here in non-vet way rescuers. So the first one is AoE. What do you do in AoE? Meaning more than 2-3 mobs. First down, Proxy Det, you want to stay within 8 meters, and all I do is literally just spear spam. Spear spam, spear spam, spear spam, spear spam. And Breath of Life when I need to, and some more spear spamming while maintaining Proxy Det. That's literally all I do. So here we go with the Alligator. Gonna do a little intro to our DPS here. So you're just maintaining 2 dots really in channeled focus. Proxy that you can maintain, but I don't like to do it because it makes the rotation a little bit more complicated. So at optimum range, you want to sit in your channel focus, get Vampire's Bane up, Wall of Elements, and then Dark Flare 2 or 3 times. Remember that Wall of Elements is every 8 seconds, while Vampire's Bane is like 11. So you're going to have to, I like to cast Vampire's Bane Empowered first because it can benefit from Empowered because it does damage up front. Whereas Wall of Elements, let me get the right saying here, Blockade of Fire, Elemental Blockade. And I take that, the morphed, because the other morph doesn't do as much damage on the explosion. So the extra tick is way more damage when I tested it. So remember that Shooting Star, you can empower the Shooting Star, so it benefits from it, and we're going to empower it via Inner Light. So you can just hit Inner Light now and get the empowering effect. So we're going to just basically cycle through a bunch of empowered effects to get way more damage up front than we would otherwise. So what I do is on my back bar, I go Channel Focus, Proxy Det, Inner Light to get the empower for the next attack, bang, Meteor. That's once we cast Meteor, we're also going to get an empower. So then we're going to use the empower for Vampire's Bane because it does damage up front. Blockade, 3 Dark Flares, rinse and repeat. Psycho, you ready?
Good.
Okay. So I'm going to get him get aggro here on this guy. And now remember, this is like half the DPS that I do on live server because I don't have Torx Pack Swords and all this sorts of stuff. But live server, I'll show you the damage. Okay, Channel Focus, Proximus Detonation, Inner Light, Vampire's Bane. Now we weave some Dark Flares. So here we go. 1, 2, and about 3. And that's when Wall of Elements needs to be recast. Then another Dark Flare and power there. Also lay down your channel focus because your execute phase will benefit from having more magic. So we're going to maintain Wall of Elements, Vampire's Bane, and then Dark Flare. Now I like executing around 25% still. The main thing I like to do is having all my dots up first. So I'm going to recast those 2. And boy am I out of magic on the PTS. But anyways, got those 2 going. And the good old Jesus Beam. With both Blockade and Vampire's Bane up. And that's it. So obviously I'm running out drastically because I don't even have any potions or anything. But that's the rotation. So let's go through it again real quick, just mentally. Channel Focus, Proxy Det. Now, remember, when you lay down Channel Focus, you can move out of it. But when you go back in, it refreshes that timer. So maintain it within that 8-meter radius of the boss. Because Proxy Det's going to hit in 8 meteors. blockade's going to hit in 8 meters. So it's range, but you still want to be up close enough that you get proxied and elements. So that's where I position myself on the boss. So channel focus right here. Bang, inner light. It's going to empower our meteor. And the meteor is going to empower our vampire's bane into a few dark flares while all elements is up. Then you're going to go back to vampire's bane. Then you're going to go back to dark flare spamming. That's as simple as this gets. Not a lot has changed on the gear front in terms of what's effective for Magic Templars. You know, last what we used, you should be using Julianos or Twiceborn Star. Both are very, very effective. I personally like Julianos with the Thief Munda Stone. Though if you do have Twiceborn Star, it performs very well. It gives you a little more max health, a little less crit, but you can run the Twiceborn Star set, which is hard to craft, but Thieves in the Shadow. Either way, they both perform very, very well. I highly recommend all Divines on the traits. That seems to produce better damage than having a little bit more max magic. So Julianos is crafted here in Arsenium. And then you have some flexibility in what else you do. So for me, I run the Willpower set, and I think this is almost mandatory just because of the amount of magic and spell damage it gives you. I run spell damage enchants on live server, though if you were going to do the new trial, you'll need at least 1 recovery in order to make those long fights. And then flexibility, like I said. Vet Maelstrom Arena Staff is key to this build, though you don't have to have it. It still benefits using Wall of Elements, and it still benefits weaving in Dark Flares as the Spare attacks me. How dare you interrupt? Let me give him a little Empowered Dark Flare. Yeah, he didn't like Empowered Dark Flare, did he? No, he did not. Thank you, Bear. Okay. So gear is pretty much still the same. Now, on PTS, we tested every single helm. That makes sense. We tested Molekina. We tested Narayaneth, which is down here. We tested Valken Scoria. And Molekina, it works very well, but the problem is you're going to blow through your magic if you're proccing this one you don't want to. So ideally, the one piece is fantastic. But what I use on live server that I've found a lot of success with is 2 pieces on my head and shoulders, Seducers, and then my swords also Seducers. And then if you did not have a Maelstrom Arena Staff, you could make a Seducer's sword with Nirnhone trait. So that has been very, very successful for me in Maelstrom Arena, maintaining a lot more magic, and then typical Molekina. Yes, Molekina is the optimal amount of damage, but you'll blow through your magic. So it's just up to you. The good news is this does not really benefit a whole lot from the 2-piece set. So if you guys don't have those, you can still work this. Like I said, Narayaneth is very, very good. My idea was that it would proc off a Dark Flare, and it does, but not enough times to warrant using it. Also, I thought that the Valken Scoria would proc a lot due to the 2 dots we're running, and it actually doesn't. My friend Vocal and Swag figured out something key to why this set doesn't work very well. The reason it doesn't work very well is what ESO considers a dot damage over time effect is something that doesn't do damage up front. So if you look at Vampire's Bane, you shoot someone, it does damage up front, then an additional amount of damage. So ESO doesn't really consider this a dot, and this can proc Narayaneth. Now what they consider a dot is this. You use an ability, it does flame damage every second. So really the only thing in our kit that's going to proc Valken Scoria is Blockade of Fire. And this just does not warrant it. So when I was using this, it was around 500 DPS a second. When I used Narayaneth, it was around 700. That just doesn't make sense to use those in that case. So if you want even more damage than Seducers and you're not struggling with Sustain, you can go a 4-piece Magnus. Or you can go 3 Seducers and 1 Molekina. It's up to you. But I like the Seducers 4-piece setup that I got from Nifty. And then the 5-piece Julianos with the Willpower setup. Or you could go Ultra Recovery and go the Orsinium Trinimax set here, a 4-piece of that, along with 1 Molekina. Either way, I like the 5-1-1 setup with the Undaunted passives here. Undaunted, if you don't know, the metal, 6% more max stats. More max stat is good and juicy. And you shouldn't have a whole lot of sustained issues. So try to have 1 medium and 1 heavy. A lot of questions on how to level this up, That. Fast, really complete dungeons achievements and undaunted pledges. The way to level this up fast is just to clear out your undaunted achievements. Do the speed runs, the no deaths or the death challenges. Do all the non-vets and the veteran ones, and do your dailies. If you do that, you can max this sucker out within a couple weeks. But you really need to be doing the PvE. Complete Veteran and Maelstrom Arena, complete Dragonstar Arena, Vet, those achievements, and then doing trials will actually boost this up faster too. Alliance War, how do we get proxy debt? So they made some changes, making it easier to get proxy debt, lowering the AP requirement to get it. I don't know what's going to make it on live server, if it's going to be, easy to get assault rank 10 like this, or if it's going to be hard. But the best way to get proxy debt right now is to simply zerg. I hate to say that, but it is. To play in a huge group, just healing, spring spamming, or mutagen, or rapid regeneration. I know it's people don't like it, but really that's the way the game is built. You don't get punished for being in a huge group. You only benefit. So when I go out solo, I'm not making a whole lot of AP, though it's a fun play style. But that's what you got to do to get proxy debt. That's what you got to do. So that's how you get it fast, AP fast. The best way to get AP for most people is just not going to be possible. Have a super coordinated group that plays together all the time, and they're very good individually and in a group. It's just very unlikely that you're going to have a whole lot of those running around. So that's how we get those things. And the gear setup, pretty simple. One last change, and that's champion points. The last thing to go over is champion points. The red and the green tree haven't changed that significantly. So I recommend a split between Hardy and Elemental Defender here, which Hardy now includes physical damage. That's a very nice change. Also, you might benefit for some quick recovery. I use this in Maelstrom Arena, and that really helps my healing receive. So the Magician will reduce cost. This is very nice for PvE, but if you have a race that benefits from recovery, and you're going to run that Seducer setup, I try to run more on the Arcanist, especially if you're a high elf. Now, my Dummer on live server, I do a split that's more geared towards reduced cost than it is recovery. Okay, so the big changes here is with Thaumaturge. Thaumaturge is still very valuable. I don't know the calculations on which is the optimal way to spec into this. I think Nifty and some other folks are working on that. But now, Thaumaturge is damage over time effects, which we use a lot of. And it's not magic. So that is a decent change for us, because now we get Elemental Expert with magic, and then obviously you're going to want to pump up Elfborn. So we get all of our good little juicy magic passives here. So just remember that I still like the about 100 or 90 points in the Thaumaturge. I do about 60 or so here in the Elfborn, and then the rest in the Thaumaturge for my damage over time effects. So that's what I did with the 500 point CP cap, and that's what was netting the 27,000 single target damage. And that's the Templar. I'm super excited about this new change, the Templar. I think it's a lot more fun rotation than sitting pressing one button. I have some range. I have to incorporate skill a lot more so. I don't have to double bar inner light now, so it frees up a lot of my abilities to come up with some more creative, unique things. So who knows what will change. My friend Nifty does have a really good build as well that uses puncturing sweeps over this and purifying light. So I'm excited to see what you guys think about this build. Somewhat the same, somewhat different, but man, the Templar is pumping out massive damage now. So stay tuned. I will do the Magic Dummer Dragonite yet next. I will get that done. I know you guys have been craving that, so please just give me a second. So thanks for watching. Omega's done. We're going to move on to the Dummer Dragonite next and see if we can't hit the same amount of numbers.